This is a story called The Donkey, Not the Monkey and the Nuts. It's amusing to think about, but it wasn't amusing at the time. It's from about 1974. It's when Ruth and I were running a small haulage company, and we'd started to run regularly to South Wales from Lincolnshire. Lincolnshire is on the east coast of the UK, and South Wales is on the far west. It's hundreds of miles. And we got a client from Sleaford, a chap called Alan Hubbard, who was a feed merchant, and he got clients in South Wales. Times were difficult because there'd been wet winters and wet summers, and a lot of the farmers in South Wales, they're all small hill farmers, hadn't got much in the way of fodder, and so that's hay and straw, and it was in fairly short supply, and they were desperate. They needed bedding and feed for their animals, and there was none available in Wales because the weather had been so bad it hadn't been made. There just wasn't enough to go around. So Alan Hubbard was trying to buy this stuff all over the east of England. We went down as far as Cambridge to pick up loads, all over Lincolnshire, collecting hay and straw from wherever he could get it and taking it to farmers in South Wales. Well, that was difficult enough as it is. There's myself and Michael doing it. Michael was our brother-in-law, my brother-in-law, Ruth's brother, and he was our mechanic. He was also our assistant driver. He was using a small 7.5 ton Ford, very second hand, and I was using and also a very second hand Bedford KM long wheelbase flatbed lorry, which we'd bought from Marshall Brothers at Butterwick. For this particular job, actually, it hadn't been expensive. They'd had it for years and years and years, running produce every night to markets all over England. Big produce merchants, still are, in Butterwick. So this lorry was well worn, and so off we went to Wales. Now, this particular time, I was actually taking a load of animal feed nuts. Michael wasn't with me, and I'd got 10 tons of animal feed in bags, in half hundredweight bags on this lorry. 10 tons was its permitted maximum load. The bags were sheeted down and roped down. There are, for those of you who don't live in England, then a ton, an English ton, is 20 hundredweights. And hundredweight bags, they don't have them anymore now because of health and safety and things. So everything is in this kind of bulk stuff, like potatoes and animal feed, is in half hundredweight bags. So there were 20 hundredweights to a ton. And because we're in half hundredweight bags, there was 40 of these bags to a ton, and I got 10 tons. So I got 400 of these bags on the back of the lorry. There was 2 drops. Where we're going in South Wales was difficult country. It was small little roads and very steep hills. Llandilo, Conwyl Elford, Newcastle Emlyn, Carmarthen. We even went near Aberystwyth up on the coast once or twice, very close to Aberystwyth. Cardigan Bay. Oh golly. I mean, that is the other side of the country, the opposite side to where we lived. So this particular day then, I was pootling along with this lorry, and I eventually got to somewhere near where I wanted to be. And I thought, right, I'll choose the first drop, and I just couldn't get there. The Bedford KM, all right, it's a nice lorry to drive, and it's all right, but it's a bit gutless. I think it has a 5 litre 6-cylinder diesel, but it hadn't got a lot of power. Well, this one particularly hadn't, because it was end of its life. And we came to this enormous hill. It was something like 1 in 4 perhaps, and getting worse as you get higher up. And it had bends in it as well, and very narrow. Anyway, I got as far as I could, and the clutch decided it had enough, and it wouldn't keep connected. So the clutch started to slip, and in first gear this is, revving as hard as I can go. So, right, what do you do then? Why to go backwards? So how do you go backwards down a hill in a big lorry with a load on the back, using your brakes? Well, for a start, air brakes need the compressor, which is connected to the engine, needs the compressor to be working to provide air for the brakes. Now, if you've got your foot on the brakes all the time, it means you're pressing, it feeds, it empties the cylinders on your brakes and makes the brakes come on, you see. So you need the compressor to be constantly filling these cylinders on all four wheels, both axles. So I had to have one foot on the throttle, keeping the engine going. I wasn't in gear because I was going to start going back down the hill backwards. Didn't read reverse because it was like 1 in 4. You got enough momentum without having to go into reverse gear. So I started going back as slowly as I could. And brakes, of course, getting hotter and hotter all the time. And the engine revving fairly hard to keep the air up in the cylinders as I was pressing the pedals off and on, off and on, off and on. And that's shooting the air out to make the brakes come on. So I did fairly well, I think, really. Went around a few corners and got down fairly close to the bottom, and eventually the brakes had enough. And I ran into a bank at the side. So this road had got steep sides to it on both sides. Narrow road. I found a picture, actually, which is pretty much like it was. Anyway, the brakes had enough, and I just ran into the bank at the back with one of the back corners of the lorry, and it crumpled some of the bags in that corner, broke them. Anyway, the food was contained within the canvas covering and everything, so it wasn't too bad. So I eventually got to the bottom of this hill and tried to sort myself out and find the other delivery address. Where was it? Well, it was somewhere further over towards the west. Didn't look too hilly, so off I went, and eventually found this second drop. I mean, the food was the same. It didn't matter who had which food because it was 10 tons of the same stuff. So I found this farm, and there's nobody there. There's just a young girl sort of looking after some animals, and I said, I've got this delivery of food. Well, she said, you better put it in this shed, and she showed me a shed, and it's fairly empty. And so I drove as close as I could with the lorry, because I was going to take the feed bags off the front of the lorry. Long wheelbase, axle 2/3 of the way down the back, the actual lorry body. So you couldn't take the load off the back because it left everything on the front axle, and you couldn't steer the thing. It's illegal anyway. So the load was coming off the front. It was getting on in the day, so got the sheet off, started taking these bags off. That's 200 bags on my own. And I started stacking them inside this shed neatly, rows, and I think I went about 5 or 6 high and a couple of rows deep and that kind of thing. And eventually I got finished, and I closed the door. Now it was a stable. I do remember this. It's a stable door, and the bottom half of the stable door had a sliding bolt. You slide it sideways, secure, and the top half had like a Norfolk latch on it, and shut the door, latched it firm. Found the girl, and I said, I'm going to stay the night, I think, because I can't get to my next drop tonight. Well, she said, if you want, you can stay in front of the hearth in the big room. It's nice and warm. It can't have been midsummer or anything. I was looking for somewhere warm, so I got my sleeping bag out, and I spent the night on the hearth of this big fire in this big room. Got up next morning. It was daylight, so nobody about. So I wandered out to the lorry. Oh, no mention of food. I must have had something in the lorry, cold bottle of cold drink or something, and maybe an odd sandwich or a sausage roll, but that's about all. So didn't see anybody in the morning. Went out, and the lorry is still parked near this shed. I'd put the sheet back on and roped it all down, ready to get off. And there was a bit of a kerfuffling going on in this shed, and the door was open. So I went and had a look, and there, inside this shed, was a donkey. And I'd not seen the donkey the night before at all. And it had got in, opened his shed door, and it was there with the feed bags, and it looked like it had opened It looked to me as if it opened every blinking bag, and it was woofing this food. What a mess, you know. Well, I couldn't do anything about it. I got no, well, I had to get on, you see, and deliver this rest of this stuff and then get back. Well, what did I do? I got a donkey out, and because it wouldn't do the donkey any good eating all this grub, you see, it'd make it ill. Got it out. It just made a lot of mess, and shut the doors again, and I beetled off. I did get to the second drop. I did get up that hill eventually because I only got half a load on. I got it delivered, and I think if I remember rightly, that particular journey I had a back load. Very unusual to get a back load, because we normally had to get back to Lincolnshire because there was another load waiting to come. It's not economic good sense to return without a load, but Wales, you can't always get a load from Wales back to Lincolnshire. I mean, it's like taking, I don't know. Anyway, it's not really possible very often. So this particular day, I'd always kept in contact with Marshall Brothers. Now, it's all to do with, it must have been springtime, that's right. Cauliflowers. Now, cauliflowers are grown in Lincolnshire. It's good ground for it. And Marshall Brothers are some of the biggest producers. And because you can't produce cauliflowers very early in Lincolnshire, then they had some farms in South Wales, Kidwelly. It's about as far as you can go on the southwest coast of Wales before you drop into the sea. And I had provisionally fixed up to take a load of cauliflowers back to Lincolnshire, to their pack house in Lincolnshire, where they would pack them and get them ready for take to clients and things. And I rang up, and yeah, there was a load for me, so I did make my way to Kidwelly from the second drop. I think I got there that same day, and there's big cheers from the folks cutting these cauliflowers. You cut them by hand with a big knife, you know, like a machete, and they're in fairly fragile crates. I think these were in returnable crates, which are more substantial, about 10 or 12 to a crate, cut and trimmed. Anyway, see, this lorry had been one of their own, and it was designed to carry crates of cauliflowers or that kind of thing, veg crates. So that's why it's as long wheelbase as possible, because the weight isn't very heavy, vegetables. Anyway, I did get loaded up and got these crates on the lorry and roped on and beated off back to Lincolnshire. I never did hear any more about the animal feed and the donkey, but it was a bit of a nightmare, really. Next morning, you know, not having the doors open, and there was this donkey destroying everything I'd done nice and neatly, stacks of bags. Anyway, goodness knows what they did with it all, but that was another little incident. While taking lorry loads of stuff, agricultural supplies, to farmers in South Wales. There's lots more stories. I'll think about one or two more to tell you, but recreationally, I never went to Wales. It was a nightmare, you know. Every time we set off for Wales, you didn't know what on earth was going to happen. Normally something went wrong. I'll tell you one or two more another time, but if you like the stories, then do think about subscribing or share, you know, giving us a like and subscribing to the channel. It does help the channel to grow. It's a great help to us. We do appreciate that. If you want to watch or listen to more stories like from our Buzzsprout selection, you can have a look at our website. Here's a link coming up, and you can see all kinds of things on there, from the Buzzsprout to actually full storybooks you can download as well. All kinds of subjects. There's picture story books, books for children. So thank you for being with us today, and until the next time, cheerio.